What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 307 of Opinions May Vary. I'm your host, JR, and my co-host with me, Alex.
Hello.
Hey, it's good to see you again.
Yeah.
It's been so long, like 4 days.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Joining us this week over the internet machines, I'm not sure which one we're using today, is artist Jonboy Meyers. Jonboy, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey guys, what's up? Thanks for having me.
Now, I'm going to let this is another one that I'm going to ditch off to Alex because I'm dumb. And he's going to tell it better than I can.
People have already heard our Boston Comic Con of last year's, or the Boston Fan Fest talk.
Our recap.
And we split up pretty fast because I had to go find Artist Alley because I need to just hoard Artist Alley. And one of my targets was to find Jonboy, because what I'll do, I'll search, who's going to be at the convention, and then I compare that to my Collector Z program, and I look at what issues because it'll show me what issues I have, and then when I put in someone's name, it'll show me if I have any of their work, and I go, oh shit, this guy did Royals? Like, at the time, the new Inhumans book, and I love the Inhumans, and I got to get this guy to sign my Inhumans work. And so eventually I got there, and I found his table, and it wasn't there. But he had such great stuff, and his wife is such a great salesperson. I bought one of his original pages and then came back later to get it signed. And even like coming back, oh yeah, she's like, he'll be back, and he's at a panel or something. And so I came back and he signed my issues, and he was such a super nice guy, and he was being so nice the entire time. It's like you get nervous sometimes, and I go, I'm a podcast guy. Can you do my podcast? And he goes, sure. What's your phone number? And I'm like, what? Like I choked.
Are you sure? Are you really? No, you don't have to do it. You don't have to. Just forget I asked.
Because what I explained to some friends, it's like usually when I ask an artist, they give me the email because that's something they could easily ignore. And I'm like, now I have the responsibility of a phone number now, and here we are.
No, like you guys are pretty cool dudes, and I know Jason Shatner, and Jason spoke very highly of you guys, and I just actually listened to the podcast with him too. That was really nice job, guys.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, hey, that's pretty neat.
Good dude. He's a really good dude.
He really was. He was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That was also spawned from an awkward interaction.
We are the masters. It's mostly Alex.
Did he give you a discount? Does he give you a discount on art now? Or?
Next time we see him, we'll see. Maybe.
Okay. Come on, man. Come on. We go way back. He's
exactly. Yeah. Like we featured you to like 3
That's
people.
Right.
Come on. But yeah. So and initially I had, as soon as Alex dropped Royal, because I am a bandwagoner on the Inhumans. I just recently got into the whatever you want to say.
Right. Okay.
And then like typically once every 6 months or so, I go, hey, Alex, what's a really good Inhuman story? I want to read more Inhumans. And he lists off the same ones that he told me the previous 6 months. And then I don't read it because I'm lazy. And then I just continue reading the new stuff. But to see that, because I had picked up Royals back when it had first come out. God, when was that? Like a year ago?
About a little over. Yeah.
Almost. I think they came out, March or April, I think.
Oh, this is number 3.
For Royals.
July of 2017.
There's been multiple number ones of Inhumans for the last, I think, 3 or 4 years. So it's kind of hard to keep up. But like, for me, it was always like my benchmark stuff for Inhumans is always the Kirby Stan Lee stuff is like the Bible, that is like untouchable. And I think working on that series is something like, hey, look, this is kind of what it should be. And then when I was working on it, I was like, oh, like we were talking earlier, I was like, it's really not. It's like, oh, okay, all right, well,
yeah,
that's cool. Okay, so well, what are you gonna do, right?
Well, looking over some of like your design work, which is featured on your website, and one of the things I never occurs to me, but people who are actually artists, where it's like, sometimes you'll think, well, I'll draw this thing once and then it's finished, right? It's like, no, if you're designing like a new run for a character, you have to pick their costume, and now you make like 20 versions of their costume and see which one gets approved, or like which one you like best, or looks the coolest and whatnot.
Yeah.
And like there's at least I'll say 15 versions of Medusa on your designs page?
Oh man. Yeah, like early on, um, this is really weird because like I don't know when this happened in comics, but this is like a thing now where like writers get like months and months and months to develop an arc. It's really bizarre to me.
Okay.
Whereas as an artist, you have like a short time to do stuff, and so like, hey, we're doing this Inhumans thing. We want you to do it. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, hey, you can do pretty much whatever you want. Like, if you want to do something new with it, that's cool. I was like, all right, cool. What's the concept? They're like, we don't really know. We're thinking it's going to be Inhumans in space. And I'm like, what? I was like, all right, well, what? Oh, like, okay. So, and trying to wrap your head around that. And I'm like, well, can you give me a little bit more? And they're like, we really don't know. So I talked to Al Ewing, the writer, about it. And he's like, well, they're kind of, they're cast outs and they're kind of like, searching for themselves and all this stuff. So, so during that time, during the concept phase of like creating costumes and things, I kept thinking like, well, this is not a superhero book. God, this is not a superhero book. And I need to stop drawing it like doing superhero designs because it's not going to fit. This doesn't feel right. So, I was watching a movie, Mad Max Fury Road, and they had told me that, oh yeah, it was a great one. George Miller is like awesome. And there's this character called Furiosa, and I'm like, oh yeah, she's so badass. And they had told me early on that Medusa's dying and she's going to lose her hair. And I'm like, oh, this is perfect. So I was like, you know what? This is what it's got to feel like. It's got to feel like kind of a high concept, but they're kind of like rogues in space type of deal. Like they're kind of getting by on their own wits, and they start out pretty clean, but as the series goes on, their costumes get rougher and rougher because they're trying to keep it together. And originally they're supposed to be in space for like I think 7 years, but I think it turned out to be like 6 months or something. I don't know, but so that really informed the design. It's like, you know what, the suits need to feel regal, sci-fi. That way it kind of fits the space theme, and also as the things progress, it kind of like, they kind of get dirtied up and kind of beat up as the series goes. But this is kind of how the progression is supposed to go. And I even did a hair chart, I think I never really published, for Medusa, where she was slowly losing her hair. Like first issue, it's still long, but it gets shorter and shorter, and then it turns like almost whitish red, and then it just gets down to where she's just like, holding on to the chosen few, you know what I mean? So, but somehow that never really translated. And I think, she ended up with white hair all of a sudden, which is really weird. I'm just like, and she never looked sick to me either. She was supposed to be sick, and she was progressively supposed to get sick, like sunken eyes and all this stuff.
Right.
And it's supposed to be like wilting too. Cause like think of her like a pretty flower. And she was slowly kind of wilting and things like that. And I'm like, hey, like this. And they're like, oh yeah, cool. And then I don't know what happened. Like, I guess so. But at that time, like right after like the second issue, like there's problems with production schedule, with Marvel's schedule. And they're like, hey, we'll just put you on something else. And I'm just kind of like, what? All right. Okay.
But I've worked on this.
Well, yeah, I was really committed to it. I think though, which really sucks because like, fans are always like, I mean, I've got to hear from everybody like, yeah, you bailed on Teen Titans, you Spawn, now you're bailing on Royals, and you're just bad for comics. And I'm like, people don't even know, and it's really hard. Like I can't just sit down and say, well, let me straighten you out and talk about it. Like, there's this thing called contracts, and
right.
When publishers script the terms of your contract with production on your issue and things like that, everything has to be renegotiated. And if it doesn't get renegotiated, it's just like, whatever you accept as a new deal is going to be the new deal. So, and you really don't want that because it usually means less money for the artists. So, yeah. But I'm glad you like the designs on it. Sorry, we got on a tangent.
No, it's okay. I want to come back to that later. But
sure.
Like the progression I'm seeing, as it's laid out, the early model is something more of like what she's recently had with a very detailed, like layered kind of look. And then
right.
I can see, I want to say like you took like Kirby-esque notes to some of her first appearances, like when she's wearing the mask and everything, and then I see where it transitions like into the, you know, like the space armor kind of uniform thing. Is there ever an issue like where you just run out of ideas? It's like, well, you know, I'm gonna draw my version of Beast Boy, and then I'm done. So, you know, to what extent do you go, I guess I'll do like another 10 versions?
You know what? Sometimes there's kind of a caveat to that too, because like there's the one hand for the design end, you kind of like always get back to what excites you about the character. And for me, I get really excited about the old Kirby stuff. And when you see a lot of the retro superhero designs from Medusa, that's kind of I wanted to get back to, like, let's get back to their roots. Mm-hmm. But then they're like, well, you know, they're going to be in space now. And I'm like, look, this superhero retro stuff doesn't fit. But I just felt like, you know, it's still, even though she's a queen in exile, she still's got to look regal. She needs to look royal. Like, she's still like this elegant creature that she's still like, she's got class, you know, like, you know, you just can't throw her in rags right away. So I was like, well, look, you know, maybe it's got to be a progression for her where it's that downward spiral. So we'll start off like, you know, a layered look where she has these royal gowns and a crown and things like that. And then when she goes into space, like after the first issue, she drops all that stuff. And it's a little bit more utilitarian, you know, where it's still kind of like a skirt and kind of a half tiara and things like that, to where it kind of signifies that she's still royalty. And I think all those costumes now, looking at the latest incarnation, like, man, I love costume design, but I hate, like, if you're going to change my costume design, make it better. Don't make it worse. Oh, and like, some of the designs, not really an improvement, but I can see where it's comics. People are trying to streamline a little bit, where things are a little easier, a little faster, which I get. So, but I'm like, oh, guys, you guys are totally missing the whole point of like me doing that and doing this. Like you're kind of taking the feminine qualities out of that when you're you know, putting her in just a bodysuit, you know. And I think that's more Crystal's thing. Medusa's more of a queenly, kind of elegant type of creature, and you want to create a difference between the two characters. You know, if not, it's just like everyone's running around in bodysuits, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like, you want to make characters. Don't want to,
right?
You know, like, just okay, slap it on and just keep going. I'm just like, ugh. But I mean, it's every artist thing, and I'm not, you know, I don't want to knock any artist for their choices. I just thought like, you know, not really an improvement there, but okay, that's cool.
Yeah. Was it because you had mentioned when you were coming up with the designs that you had to kind of re-examine, you know, your approach to it. Is that a difficult thing for artists to do, to be able to recognize this isn't working, I need to change my approach? Like, do you chalk that up to experience, or is that something that all artists, you know, really should be able to recognize?
You know, it's kind of a loaded question, because you always get married to a certain design that you're really just falling in love with, and you're just like, oh, I love this so much. But the thing is, you know, design always has to represent and match a narrative. So if these characters going into space, like if they're in costumes, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, well, why do you have a mask on? Why do you need one? Like, you know, and these types of things. So it's kind of like, you know what, like, to make that more believable, to sell that, like, this is what they're wearing when they leave Earth. It's a different type of thing, you know, and you want to create that separation for the reader, where it's when they're reading the story, you're like, oh, you know what, this really fits and this is believable. Because sometimes when you'll read a story, you're like, man, that doesn't match. I don't know why this is kind of off to me. And it could be because the design doesn't match the narrative, or the characters aren't acting quite in character. There's these little subtexts of things that, as a reader, that might put you off, that you're not really aware of why it's putting you off, but you're like, hey, you know, this is off-putting for XYZ reason, you know, and sometimes you have to go through like 10 or 20 before you have to do them. I think the downside to that is, like, you know, I come from a background of working in animation and video game design and stuff. And like, you know, my only gripe, if there's a gripe, you know, because these companies can pay you a design rate, that they just don't, but they expect you to do all this stuff for free. And I think me doing this stuff and posting it online is making more artists feel like they have to do it too. And I keep telling them, look, don't do it for free. Because, like, I just did $20,000 of the free stuff for Marvel, half of which you guys haven't even seen. There's 3D models and all this other stuff. And, like, you know, like most video game companies pay for that. And like for you, like, you know, you're going through a whole design process and approval process and stuff like that. And I'm like, dude, and if you make a toy out of it, you know, they make a toy, you don't get any of that.
Yeah.
You know? They make it a movie and they use it in movie props or whatever. You don't get anything of that, you know? So I'm trying to, I'm kind of like, hey, you know what, my next job, I was like, hey, look, the design shop is closed. So if you want me to do this stuff for you guys, that's cool, but you guys got to pay me something. Cause like, if you're letting a writer, you know, develop something for 6 months, mm-hmm. like, and you want me to sign on to this book and wait until this story, just literally wait until the story is done. Like, how am I going to eat during that time? I need to be doing stuff, some kind of money if you want me to wait for this book. Like, you know, I mean, that kind of makes sense, especially if you're on a contract or an exclusive. It's kind of like, you know, it's different if you're just freelance and you pick them an issue and like, hey, design this, you know, jerk off to fight this guy. Like, it's no big deal. But I think if you're under contract and you're actually waiting for work, it's like there's, you know, I think that's my only gripe that I experienced both at Marvel and at DC. It's like, guys, like, you know, I do have to work for a living. Like, I need, you know, like, what do you want me to do? You know, it's like, so I think that's the tough thing. So I think artists out there, I would recommend, if you are doing it, you're giving away free stuff, and you know what, they'll say, thank you very much. We're going to make a bunch of toys out of this. We're not going to credit you, and thanks. And that's it, you know, and you're like, it is your book. And I understand there's a certain amount of pride in that, but just be careful about how much you want to give away for free, I would say.
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, you don't want to just work for free and while you're sitting around waiting while you have bills to pay. It's not really, I don't think it's an ethical thing, but, you know, you just don't do that to yourself.
Well, I've wondered where some things come from, because our friend Brett introduced me to Project Rooftop, and that's where I first saw Dennis Medry doing some of his like 60s Batman stuff.
Oh, Rockabilly, yeah.
Yeah, the Rockabilly Bat, and like the Joker's like looks like Jerry Lee Lewis. It's great. It was all amazing. And then like within 2 weeks, I'm seeing cosplayers doing those designs. And
I think that's awesome. That's
it was
great,
fantastic.
Yeah.
But with that kind of thing, I wonder like, because I don't know the process or like what initially spawned it, but it's like, did DC pay someone to do like, hey, do Bombshell versions of our people, or does someone just make a Bombshell Wonder Woman and they go, it's a book now, that's a figure now, thanks?
Yeah, that's another thing too, is you really got to be careful about what you put out in the world as an artist, because I mean, they have Bombshells, which is very similar to the Rockabilly type stuff. Mm-hmm. And you know, it's kind of like, dude, like, you know, I think Dennis just gave them a whole idea for a whole concept of things that they can be or should be doing. And
I've seen other artists doing his Rockabilly stuff, which is great. But
yeah, it's I think it's great. I think it's just a shame that the artist who started it, that movement, does not get work or get, you know, something out of it. It's kind of like, maybe he did though. I don't know. I know Dennis, but I don't know him that well. But maybe he did end up getting work for it. They offered him. He said, "No, I can't do it."
I hope so. I would hope.
I don't know, but yeah, I think the things about it is that you have to understand is the things that you do for these big companies, and if you're doing a tribute piece or something different that's based off a brand, when you put that out there as fan art or whatever, you technically don't really own that. The copyright holder owns that. Yeah. You know, you're doing otaku, which is fan art, which is basically free for anybody, you know, and it's kind of a gray area. So you kind of really want to be careful of what you're doing, because especially if there's something you're in love with. I'm like, dude, you know what? I really love this Rockabilly Batman. You know what? I'm going to pitch. I'm not going to put this online, but I'm going to pitch this story, you know, to DC, and like, hey, you know, 50s Rockabilly Batman kicking butt. What's up? You know,
I'd read that.
Right?
Yeah, great.
Jared, did you see these designs?
Which ones?
The Dennis Medry Rockabilly stuff. Brett showed them to us like a long time ago.
Maybe.
Bane is basically like a luchador.
Yes. Isn't Bane a luchador already?
No.
Yeah, kind of.
Meh.
It's still cool though.
And Poison Ivy had like a real like librarian kind of look to her. It was great. There's so much. I'm debating where. What you're talking about with I'm sorry, we're still stuck in design stuff, but
that's cool.
I watched some of you have links to YouTube videos that you've appeared in, doing other interviews in things, And one that kind of cried out to me was when you were talking about working on Spawn and talking to Todd McFarlane and him like, you know, giving tips on whatever about like, well, you know, if you move Spawn's cape a bit, you could cover up half this leg that you don't have to draw now.
Yes.
And with stuff like that, it's like, well, at some point I understand it's like, but I want to draw this. But at the same time, our friend Rich Woodall explained to us the Mike Mignola theory of when in doubt, black it out.
Oh man, oh dude, like McFarlane even used that quote. Like he was talking, oh Jonboy, you know, you're drawing too much, and you know, I gave him this big cape so you can hide him and stuff like that. I'm like, dude, you know, I like to draw, Todd. Like, man, come on, I got this, man. But then like about like 3 issues in, I'm like, oh hell with this, man. I'm putting this big cape.
Let me get that cape.
Oh man, I'm blacking this out. I'm like, oh, man, it's a lifesaver, you know. And I mean, Todd was always giving me really good nuggets here and there. About doing stuff and how to pace myself, and I learned so much working with Todd. I mean, both good and bad. Like I won't ever forget like those 2-hour conversations I always had with him about like art and design and what makes for good design. And yeah, he's a pretty smart dude, especially business wise, because he's always talking to me about like, you know, the business of art, you need to learn it, and you know. Don't be a dummy, you know, and like, oh, like, what do you mean? Like, you know, he goes, well, don't be one of these guys when you're like, you can't find a way to transition out, right. You know, and, but we can get to that later, but, yeah, that was, yeah, man, it saved me many a sleepless night, like blacking it out or putting that cape even bigger. I was like, oh.
What, does he have final say on issues, or does he just, you know, the current writer writes it, the artist draws it? Because when he was drawing, he would do all, you know, his 20 whatever pages and then lay them out and then start rearranging them. And so what was scripted for page 20, he would just like, looks better as 5. It's page 5 now.
Yeah, that happened quite a bit.
Really?
I think it happened mostly after when Paul Jenkins left. Because like Paul and I, we got along great, and we're always ahead all the time. And actually most of our books are 22 to 24 to 25 pages. So we got a lot of content in there for like $2.99. And I think when Paul left, and then Todd came back to the writing duties, like, you know, Todd is a super busy guy and he only has a finite amount of time. So he went from like 2-hour conversations to like 30-minute conversations to 15-minute conversations about like, hey dude, I need the script. Todd, I need to do this, and oh yeah, you know, and because he's got so much stuff that he's got to like weigh in on. It's like, you know, his stories. You know, I never felt like I was getting the best out of Todd from his stories, because he literally probably only had like maybe an hour or two to sit down and write it before he had to go do something with toys or the movie thing or this or that. You know, and
he's showing up on The Talking Dead and.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's because he's very smart about keeping his brand going and the business going, but I think the mark with comics, he needs to be able to separate himself, and I think he had a really hard time doing that, just because he is Spawn. So when he looks at things that happen in the issue, it's through his filter of like, well, would I do that or not? Yes or no? And if he wouldn't, then he has a problem with it, and you have to change it, or he'll rearrange panels, or he'll crop my panels, or blow something in, blow it up, or make it look all weird. And I'm just like, what are you doing? But I mean, at the end of the day, you have to understand, like, there's always going to be some sort of editorial control on books, and I'm okay with that. You know, I mean, that's just kind of how it is. It's his book, and you know, he gets final say, and that's cool. You know, it's like, all right, well, sometimes you get lemons, you just make the best lemonade you can, you know, and that's it. Move on to the next, and hopefully the next one's better, you know.
I've had a question, like, you know, whenever we get to talk to artists that work in comics, ever since the issue where Damien died, and there was a matter of like, it was drawn one way and then they kind of re-edited it to get printed, and it's like, is that an insult to the artist? Is that just miscommunication, or does everyone understand that like there might be an edit in your work and someone else is going to come in and maybe redraw part of it or recolor it?
Well, like, great question. I would have to say no artist that I know that I've ever talked to enjoys redrawing work.
Right.
Because usually you don't get paid for it.
Huh.
But the thing you need to understand, though, is when you're working for the big two, Marvel or DC, that you're not really just dealing with an editor or a writer. You're dealing with a whole committee. So you're dealing with, besides the artist, or besides a writer, an editor, and the group editor, you have probably another 5 to 10 people making decisions on your book. Mm-hmm. So whatever decisions you made early on, you guys decide to go with it. Then later on, guess what? Well, 2 people out of that committee don't like it, or they want to redo this or redo that. And they're like, hey, we want you to redo this or redo that. And sometimes you just usually have to go in and fix it digitally. And for me, I'm always like, depends how much of a change it is, because I don't get paid to redo it again, and if it's a complete redraw, I'm like, hey, you guys got to help me out here. It's like, but they usually consider design, again, they consider design and redraw as part of your page rate. So you always want to make sure you got a good page rate, but you can always say no. Like a buddy of mine, Olivier Coipel, I think Marvel asked him to redraw something, and he's like, no. And they're like, what? And he goes, no, I redraw for no one. In this very smart French accent. And I was just like, oh, good for you, dude. And what did they do? He goes, they printed what I drew. I was like, oh, good for you. Like, all right, man. That's great. But sometimes it's a minor change. You just go in and do it. But usually major changes like that, what you're talking about, usually happens on a thing that's not even above, it's way above my pay grade as far as, these big committees. Because you see these things like Metal and Legacy and Rebirth and all this stuff that's going on. It's all editorial committee driven. So it's 10 guys at the top making these decisions. It's a top-down type of thing. So there's always things that you scratch your head at. It's probably because they're like, well, you know what? It's just big committee, and somebody had a compromise on something. Like, well, you know what? I don't care what, but Plastic Man has to be in this series no matter what. And they're like, okay, well, we'll find a way to shoehorn him in, and there you go. And those types of things happen sometimes. You just, like I said, you get lemons, and you got to make the best lemonade you can sometimes. So. Which is sad, because I wish they were more creator driven, as far as your editor, artist, and writer get together and say, look, this is what we'd like to do with this series, and whatever crossovers we got, we'll work that in. But this is where we want to go, because you don't want. It's this really weird thing that's happened in the last 10 years. I think it's this homogenization of books, where a lot of the books that you read feel the same, and it's kind of like they kind of look the same too, and that's something that bothers me. It's like, well, you can't keep selling retailers the same stuff. You got to give them something new and something different. If everything feels the same, and like these big events, if they're overreaching into other books, I understand you want to pump up sales, but you're kind of like, if you're not really into that crossover event, these retailers are going to be holding a lot of issues. You know what I mean? You don't really want to do that. You want to, I think a more individualized approach to creating comics is smarter. I think you see how well Image is doing with it, where everything's creator driven, and there's a lot of diversity to the line and a lot of great books. And I think that's where all the talent is right now, actually, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
A lot of Marvel and DC now are coming and grabbing guys like Donny Cates and stuff like that, because they're like, hey, these guys are onto something. They have a unique voice, and they want to take it and they want to put it into that machine, but then the things that made that guy awesome, they probably won't let him do, which is going to be frustrating for him. Yeah. But it's part of a process, So
I imagine it's one of those things where a creative team will have a really great idea and really drive this character's plot, and the character might be completely redone for the better, and they finish a different place than they began, and then they're like, oh, well, there's a movie coming out in 18 months, so put him back the way he was, because that's how he is in the movie. And you go, oh, it's okay, all that work, we're just the undo button.
Yeah, it's really hard to see characters arc these days, because that was my main deal in Teen Titans too, is like, Damian arced in his old series, so you got to keep that going. He has to continue to change, but he hasn't changed. He's still the same insufferable kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
From the days, it's kind of like a huge step back, and I think that's one of the things that I kind of rubbed me wrong about this character. It's just like, you have a Arabic character who's incredibly popular. You have a really good opportunity here to do something with this character and say something positive and great, and do something different. And you're not doing that. And it's kind of like, you're kind of doing an injustice to the character. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And but again, those things are kind of editorially driven too. But I mean, most comics nowadays, most artists have zero input on their books, if at all. Like, maybe 1% of artists do, like maybe Greg Capullo does, Romita Jr. I'm sure does. I can't think of any other artist really off the top of my head who actually has a little bit more pull and sway on their books. But mostly it's editorial, editor, and writer driven market right now. So, which is a little sad to me. It's a little weird. I don't want to poo-poo anything. It's just kind of how it is, where they just give you a story and say, okay, you know what, just draw it and make it look awesome. Kind of like, it's really tough because you're being handed something that you're not, you feel like it's just product at that point, and it's not love. And it kind of like, I think for me, it kind of burns me out a little bit, because I'm expected to just give my all on this, and then I have zero say on this. And I'm like, dude, you're like totally not doing me a solid on how you're treating these characters, man. Because like, I love these characters too. Like, I love the Inhumans, and a lot of what Al was doing. Some of them I gave a great thumbs up to. Some of them I'm just like, dude, this sucks. Like, dude, don't do this, please. Don't do it. Like,
anything else?
Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of the market that we're in right now, where it's not really about the art, it's about the narrative, because the narrative could be broken down into anything. And the narrative can be a movie, can be a comic, can be a novel, can be a song, and there's power in that. And whereas the art nowadays, most artists are now serviceable. So it's like, well, we're interchangeable, we can go anywhere, we can put anybody on anything and it'll still sell. And it's, in my opinion, it's not necessarily true, but I just feel like if you get it more creative driven, you're going to get better investment from your teams. People are going to be more excited about the book. The books are going to look a lot better. The stories and the art is going to be a lot better, and people are going to stand on titles a lot longer. But it's a hard thing, man. Like, I mean, you guys see it in the market too, where it's just like, oh, it was such a great run and this stuff, and now it's done, and you're like, oh man, what happened?
Yeah. Shall we switch gears a little bit?
Let's switch gears a little bit.
Okay. As we were doing our research, I decided that I'm going to be mad at you for a second, because obviously, if you draw the card for Hearthstone, then you're responsible for what the card does. And and the Wii Spell Stopper, I have had such headaches trying to fight a team with a deck with that character on it. But you've drawn.
Is that the little girl?
It's little pink-haired. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So a little backstory on a lot of my World of Warcraft stuff is like, a lot of that stuff is recycled art from the TCG game that was pretty big, like maybe 8 years ago. And I think most card games now have shifted to online models like Hearthstone, so they're repurposing a lot of that art. So like what happens on that card and everything, it's more about the designers and the gameplay guys who decide what goes into it.
No, I'm sure it's your fault. That's...
Oh yeah, I wish. I'm like, hey, let's do some cool stuff here and do this. But no, it doesn't even translate. Right. I wish, because I love doing stuff for the TCG. I think my last stuff I've done for World of Warcraft was like, oh man, 4 or 5 years ago, I think. Like, yeah, it's been a while. So I think a lot of that stuff I just kind of walked away from, just because of, like, I think working on brands, I love it, and I don't want to poo-poo anything, and I don't want to be negative about it. So if I am, I'm sorry. It's just sometimes you get really tired of like these huge editorial committees telling you what to do and like how to do it, and like this face doesn't look right, or we don't like her nose, or things like that, and kind of picking things apart. And you get kind of tired of it. It's like, dude, if you hire awesome people, let them do awesome stuff. Like, I understand a couple of revisions where you keep going back and back and back. You're just like, it just kind of burns people out, and you're just kind of like, ah, man.
But with your work, like, it's so detailed. I can't imagine having to, redo something or alter stuff. I mean, if it's something like, well, the flame has to be green, just make the flame green. It's a green flame. That.
Oh, yeah, that's easy because you can just take that in the workable file and just mess with the levels or the saturation or the hue and change it to green, saying, okay, cool. And they're like, no, more green. You're like, okay. Yeah, it's more about like, complete redraws or redos or things like that. Because like, I think the thing you need to always keep in mind for a freelance artist, time is money. And the more time you spend on a piece, you hit this cascade where at some point you're going to start losing money on it because you're like, I'm spending too many hours on this where I have other jobs I have to do too. This is not my only client. Like, hey guys, like, look, I'll give you the file. You can fix whatever you want, like do whatever. So, and I think I did that on a couple cards I did with Dave McKay because, Dave completely changed stuff, but I think because he was art directed to do so. And I'm just like, that's cool. But like, it doesn't really look up to my art anymore. So just take my name off the card and just put Dave's name on it. Still pay me, but hey, look, like, it doesn't look like anything I drew. But it's kind of one of those things sometimes where I think when you do art for a living, it's one of those things that you're going to have to understand. Like working on the bigger brands, there is going to be a lot more control, and there is going to be a very short leash, and you have to assume that there's going to be a lot of things that are going to have to change. You're going to have to redo, no matter how many steps you let them sign off on. These things always kind of pop up a little bit. You're like, I'm always happy when I do a cover, like for like Superman or something like that, where there's no changes. I'm like, oh, thank you. Good. Okay, cool. Get this done, those are always fun to do, but it gets tough, man. Yeah. I wish I had more say on the cards though, for sure.
Did they, like, as you said, it was mainly for the TCG. Did they tell you that, like, hey, we're going to be making an online version of this, we're going to be making a new game, Hearthstone, blah, blah, blah. Like, were you aware that your art was also going to be featured in Hearthstone as well?
Yeah, I kind of knew that it would because usually, like a lot of companies do this, when they technically quote unquote paid you for something already, they can reuse that for whatever. So I knew like all those like 100 some odd cards I had done for the TCG was probably some way going to be cut up and reused for the Hearthstone game online. So I'm sure more are going to pop up. I just honestly I haven't even found out which ones have actually made it in. I think the last one they talked to me about, they wanted a workable file for like I think it's a orc girl who's shooting a gun or something like that. But that was it. I can't remember.
The quick shot.
Many. Yes, quick shot. So, yeah.
Have you played Hearthstone? Like, have you had the chance to like see, like, oh hey, I did that, like when you're playing a card?
No, you know what? I can never get into it. I played a little bit of the TCG because I like interacting with people because as an artist, you kind of like work in these little insulated bubbles.
Right.
And then playing online, like I was like,
yeah.
Yeah. And for me, going back into comics now, and animation and games too, it's like once one job's done, I'm moving on to the next, and any downtime that I have, I try to spend with my wife. Just try to make sure like we stay connected and stuff like that. I wish I had more time to play games. I don't. I want to get a new PlayStation 4, but my wife's like, why? I was like, well, because it's PlayStation 4. I can get these games. She's like, you barely even play any now. And I'm like, oh, that's true.
It's hard to argue that.
I know, right?
But if you get the PlayStation 4, then you'll be motivated to play the new ones.
Then she's like, well, what'd you get done today? I was like, no, look, I'm level 6 on this now.
That's important.
That isn't, well, in my mind's eye, for us it's important, but my wife's like, that doesn't pay the bills.
I absolutely had a failure of self one time when I realized like I did nothing all day except gain 20 levels in Borderlands.
That's number one. That's awesome. Because that's something your wife will like or girlfriend will never understand. But I understand you.
That's why I don't have one. But
you know. Oh man.
You know what though? We're trying to fill that hole with community.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it's yeah.
We fill it with art.
Yeah.
And pages of Inhumans books.
And new friends.
Right. Right. That's right. That is, by the way, an expensive hobby. Buying original art can be super expensive. I stopped, by the way, like maybe 2 years ago. So, it's, man, I mean, kudos to anybody who can do it. Just nowadays, like, man, stuff is just like super expensive. I'm like, man, I can't afford that. It's like, dude, I can't. Like, you know, but
one of your YouTube chats that I was watching, you know, you had talked about, let's see, when there was a point where you could actually buy comics and you were reading, but then you get more involved and you get busy, you don't have time to read anymore. And as you just said, like collecting original art, is there, I don't know, like what do you collect? Is there a specific team or
I still collect comics. I still collect comics, but it's mainly for creative teams or artists. So I'm reading the Tom King, Clay Mann, Batman stuff. I think really well done. Anything Olivier Coipel does, anything Jerome Opinion does. I've been picking up a lot of indie stuff though lately. Like Andrew McLean has this really great book.
Headlopper.
Oh, dude.
I love Headlopper.
That book's awesome, man. I'm just like, dude, more of this. Yes, please. So it kind of fills that void because when Mignola stopped drawing Hellboy, I'm just kind of like a little piece of me died. But like Headlopper has that kind of whimsical type of high adventure that Hellboy had. But, you know, this guy, it's really cool. So I'm just like, oh, this is a really nice book. What else am I reading? Claw, which is a European book. They're graphic novels by, I'm going to butcher this guy's name, Jolie Jerome, something like that. I don't know. But I try to pick up more boutique stuff now, like, because my time's so finite. Like, pick up stuff that I'm like, hey, you know, this is really interesting to read and stuff like that. A lot of the Jason Aaron Thor stuff is really good too.
Oh, it's so good. It is.
Yeah, really,
that's
really
one of my
good.
favorite books. Love it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Consistently, I think that's coming to an end though too. Because, well, like I think the Jane Foster Thor was one of the more successful new characters to spin out of Marvel.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm more of a fan of the status quo. It'd be really nice for Thor to get his hammer back, but for Jane Foster to become something of her own character instead of just, she doesn't have to be Thor. She can be more successful as her own character too, because you want to start, you know, like moving these characters into their own things. Because like Spider-Gwen, I think is transitioning to Spider-Ghost now, which is, I don't know how I feel about that, but like, because you're like, hey, it's Spider-Gwen, but you can't call yourself Spider-Gwen, I guess. But
right,
why can't they call her Spider-Woman? There can be more than one Spider-Woman, but I don't, because there's two Spider-Men, right? I think
Yeah.
Miles Morales.
Well,
they're changing him too. Right?
Yeah, they're thinking of changing Miles to something else.
God, I wonder what they're going to call him.
Who knows? What do you look for in original art when, like, as you said, when you were collecting or when you could afford it, and as all of us have these issues, but like, is it, because usually for me, it's something that happened in the book and the original page, you know, I get to capture that moment. Or sometimes it's just like the art style is so amazing, or also for me, it's like, oh, I finally found this artist, such as yourself, and it's like, I definitely want to be able to own a piece of them, you know, whatever it might be.
I think it's just artists whose body of work I have a great admiration and respect for, like Stuart Immonen, amazing. His Spider-Man stuff is amazing. I think anything you look at, it's just like from an artist point of view, his pacing, his storytelling, use of blacks, how he leads you through the page. It's pretty amazing. Same with Mike Mignola. Arthur Adams is another big influence of mine. J. Scott Campbell, Joe Madureira, Jason Pearson, Michael Golden. All these guys who like I really, really love. But like if you try to buy a piece of their art now, it's like freaking astronomical, man. Like I remember like when I was 18 going to Comic-Con, and I was talking to Mike Mignola at his table, and he's like, yeah, I hope I sell some pages today at Comic-Con, and they're like Hellboy pages for like $400, man. And I'm like, oh, dude, like if I'd known back then, I'd be like, oh, if I only knew,
right.
you know.
Yeah, that's a bargain nowadays.
It's a steal.
I saw McFarlane covers for like 1,200. Like, man, dude, like if I only knew, you know. But
hindsight.
I know, like everything in the market's been driven up. It's really weird. Like original art now is super expensive, but the market is smaller. It's just like, what's going on here?
Huh.
So, yeah, I kind of look for guys who like whose art means something to me, or like you too. There's a new guy out, you know, whose art I really like. I want to support. I'm like, dude, I'd love to buy a page or do this, but I think there's things now though where a lot of guys I know now are more digital, which is totally weird, like completely. Which is a shame because like your production increases actually working digital because it's a little bit easier. But you don't have an original to sell either, so it's kind of a catch-22 because then your legacy as far as art is all held in the hands of the company. So it's kind of like unless you do little one-offs here and there, but maybe that would make your work more sought after. I don't know.
Well, then they got to make up in sketches.
Right. Like that's a tough thing too because I used to do sketches for free until people started flipping them on eBay or private collectors.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I can't do that. And I started doing sketch covers and commissions, and I've kind of stopped doing that for the most part. Just every once in a while I'll do it because I found out the same thing because I still try to keep it priced where it's reasonable. But then I found out like guys, like I do it like for $400 and try to make it like really cool, like a cover. And then I found out that they would sell it for like 3 times the amount. I'm just like, dude, like, come on, man.
A little demoralizing.
I understand that happens for art. It's just, you just gotta, like, this is where my conversations with Todd are always in the back of my head. Like, I need to be more business minded. So it's like, okay, all right. Well, I still try to figure that out, but you know.
Jar, I don't know if you reviewed, when I was looking at Jonboy's Instagram, if you go down a few scrolls, whatever, there is a amazing Negan.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Like I'm not sure how old it is, but it, like it's so crisp, and just the details is awesome, and it's like I want one of those.
Oh, dude. Well, you know what? Like, I know you, so it's a little bit different. So we have a personal relationship. Those always mean more when you do artwork for people you know or have a good relationship with. It's a little different. They're like, hey, Joe Sixpack, you know, from the street.
Right.
So if you guys want something, like, just hit me up. It's totally cool. If I got time, I'd be more happy to do something. I think that Negan turned out pretty good. I think I did that at WonderCon last year. So I'll always start doing my sketches in the room, and then I'll try to ink at the show and try to ink them as they came in. Like, so they'll be all kind of sketched out, and then, okay, well, let me get this one inked up and then throw some color on it and give it to this guy and try to make sure everybody gets their art before they leave. But I never get everyone's art to them, so I just usually mail it to them afterwards. So, but yeah, that one turned out okay. They turned out all right. It's like, oh, okay.
All right.
Because some of the the paper consistency is never quite the same from book to book.
Oh yeah.
So if you erase, it like totally destroys sometimes the cover, or the cover is too waxy. And if you ink on it, then it doesn't really. You have to like wait until the ink dries because the sheen on it, the seal on it's too much. It's all these weird stuff that it's like, oh man, I wish they'd just make like really good sketch cover paper and then you can just do it, and then it's like, okay, I have no problems with that. I can knock these out faster. But because you never want to be that guy, because like some of them you'll see like there's a lot of like just smudges and smears all over it because the ink didn't take. So I'm trying not to hand on it and it gets drug on there. I'm like, oh damn it. So
well, I don't know if you ever seen I have to remember how to pronounce. I think Declan Shalvey, right? I got that right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He'll ink like with his fingerprints on purpose. Like his fingerprints
really?
become like, yeah, it's part of the page.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. It's like it's smudging,
like,
but then he'll just like he'll
to...
save it somehow.
Yeah, I guess I'm always like, I want to keep it clean, but maybe I should start dirtying it up a little bit too, because it's like I sat by Jay Lee in Vancouver at one of the Fan Expo shows, and he's like, dude, what are you doing? I'm like, what? He goes, don't do it like this. Do it like this. And he took a big brush and was all like that. I'm like, dude, that's awesome. Holy cow. I was like, dude. He goes, yeah, that would save you an hour right there. I'm like, oh, dude, good idea. Huh. He goes, if you notice, I use a lot of blacks on here and like this and like that. He goes, do it like that. Don't do it like that. He goes, you're going to be spending like 2 hours on it. I was like, oh, good idea. So I guess you're always learning new tricks. So I'm like, oh, cool. I can't wait to use this. I haven't used it, but I'm going to do it. I mean, but what about you guys? Like, what artists do you guys collect? What artists like really do it for you guys?
I've had to stay away from Tom Rainey because if I go to his table, I'll end up buying everything, or if I can't afford it, I'll run away with it. And so now it's gotten to the point where like JR has to restrain me and be like, don't go to Tom's table.
I'll normally tell him, hey, Tom Rainey's in this aisle, in case you want to try to avoid something.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tom Rainey is cool. He's like your artist kryptonite.
Yep. I mean, out of all of them, like I've got a good collection, but he's been the only one where it's like he's got enough stuff and it's priced right where I just couldn't say no anymore.
He's another talented dude that I wish was doing more, and I don't know.
Yeah. He's doing Dread God.
Okay, I don't know what that is. What is that?
Neither do we.
Okay, the writer was at Boston, and I bought the first issue off of him. And issue 3 like just came out, and it's through an independent publisher. So it's not even like Dark Horse or Image. Oh. Yeah.
Good for him. Right on. When it comes out, I'll pick it up.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
But
we're also big fans, the both of us, and it's another. Can I afford this? We're big fans of Ryan Otley.
Mm-hmm. Ryan's great. Dude, he's gonna be doing Spider-Man. I think. Don't quote me on that.
I was gonna say, because that is fun news that I have not heard yet.
Yeah.
Never mind.
We'll hide behind allegedly. Rumor has it.
Allegedly, I had heard that. What I had heard was word on the street was that he was doing Spider-Man, which is great because that fits
his style.
Right into
his style would fit so well.
I'm not gonna say that I'm gonna take full credit for that. But I have been saying that Ryan Otley's Spider-Man is prime time for years. He's really good at drawing Spider-Man. Who else? There's one other. I mean, one of my favorite artists back from when the book was out. I'm a big fan of Rob Guillory. I've only had the opportunity to actually meet him at a convention once.
Is he doing something besides now that Chew's wrapped? I mean, what is
he tweets every now and then, like teasing at his. I think he's doing a creator-owned. I think he's doing an image book. And he pretty much is as vague as possible on it. So it's like, oh yeah, my new creator-owned book. I just finished up the second issue. That's all I can say.
You're like, well, what is it? Well, I don't... Playing with your emotions. He's like, oh.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, he put out like a sketchbook a couple months ago, and but really that's all I've seen from him. He's just been working on that stuff, but. Really, lately it's been, like you said, the market's been going up. In recent years, my sketch hunting and original. I also didn't help, buying a home and all that stuff that comes along with that. So my budget is just, unfortunately, it's just not quite where it used to be. So I'm forced to mainly, stick to like, hey, can you sign this maybe, and then also beg people to come on my podcast, and that's how I just live vicariously through them. So.
Well, I think art's a really great investment. Was like I know, like, take for example, like Olivier Coipel's stuff. His early sketches. Nowadays, like it's really hard to get him at a show to get on his list. But something you paid $300 for, you could probably double your money now if you wanted to. Not saying you should sell. I'm just saying it's always a good investment, especially with artists who are on the rise and things like that. Especially people you love too. you know. But then at some point you're like, well, I want to make a house payment. Or I want to fix up the house. Where's the money going to come from? So
these two pages equal one mortgage payment. Yeah.
There you go. But I mean, that's some got to do it, and I get it too. Like we've all been there. But I think that's the fun thing about collecting, though, too, is like seeing if you can trade up for more pieces or to get something else, because there's always a grail piece that you want. I think my only gripe is like, I love doing commissions and sketches for people, but just my thing is just like, dude, just don't immediately sell it a month later somewhere else, man. Please don't do that. Like, at least enjoy it for at least 6 months or a year, please. At least, don't do that.
When you do sketches, are there preferences, or will someone say a character, and do you kind of sigh and go, what else you got? Or do you just, automatically know from the start, it's like, oh, I can make this awesome?
Sometimes it really depends. Like sometimes, because there's always a type of collector who's very specific about what they want. And for me, I will not do commissions for people like that, because no matter what you do in their mind, it's never going to measure up. So it's like, they'll say, hey, can you do a Batman? But I want him like this and like that, and his hands over your back like this. And I'm just like, dude, you should just try. You have an idea of what you want, man. Do it, and I kind of like a general idea. For me, what makes it fun for me is like, hey, can you do a really cool Batman shot or something like that? I'm like, yeah, cool, I can do that. It kind of lets me have a little more freedom to play, because, I can do things that I normally wouldn't be able to do, like on a Batman cover or whatever. I can do something a lot more fun. And then usually, like, someone from DC will see it and say, hey, can we buy that as a stock cover? I'm like, yeah, sure, here you go. Well, then some great fan has something that's potentially a cover down the road too. So, which is always great for the guy who got it. But no, I just want to do characters that I feel like I'm happy about. Like when people get really specific, then that's where you kind of like, it kind of puts the FU in fun, and you're kind of like, because I'm sure you've seen it at shows where a guy's like, hey, I want this, but I want a really super sexy pose, and I want this where she's, and I'm just like, dude, I don't have time. I can't.
If we've learned anything in what we try to pitch to other people or our listeners when we talk about it, it's to be negotiable.
Right.
And so I think the last few artists I've approached for sketches, I'll give them like a few options. And
options are great. Options are always
there was a guy, he was at New York. I don't remember his name, but I was like, how are your robots? He's like, I do dope robots. And I was like, can you do a Sentinel? He's like, I do dope Sentinels. And I was like, this was a really nice exchange.
You had a similar one with Chris Campana too.
Yeah.
At Massive.
I took out a couple sketch covers, and I had like X-Men books and like a Spider-Man book, and I was like, I would like a Sentinel. He's like, oh, I'm not good at robots. And I go, all right. And I like the next cover behind it was a Spider-Man. He goes, give me the Spider-Man.
Oh, that's I think giving the artists options like that, because there's always something that we're passionate about. Like, because we're fans too, man. I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan. And like, hey, you know what? Like, oh, how about this? Like, dude, I'll do that. Let me do something cool like that. I'm going to do this, and it's going to be awesome. And the only bad part I think about that with an artist, and I think we all do it as artists, like we'll do something really cool. We're like, oh man, here you go. So, but I think that's the fun of it though too, because like as much as like people give to me, I definitely want to give back to them too as much as I possibly can, because I'm a fan too, and anybody who stops on my table and spends a few minutes with me, I'm always super appreciative, and I just want to make sure like, hey, look, like I really appreciate you guys stopping by, and I try to find a way to connect with people, and always trying to get like a great piece of art or something like that is a really good way to do it. So I just want to make sure like people are like, hey, have a good experience, and then and be like are happy with the art they get too. So because if people aren't happy, like, I don't really like this, like, okay, cool, I'll do another one. Here you go, no biggie. So yeah.
With the new year now happening, it's actually February now, which is insane. January just kind of didn't exist, but now it is the new year. I imagine, con season is upon us. Do you have a schedule lined up yet for your appearances this year?
Yeah, actually, I'm doing weekend of February 10th through the 11th. I'll be in Vancouver, Washington, doing I Like Comic Con, and then I'll be in Anaheim for WonderCon March 23rd through the 25th, and then I'll be in Indiana for their Comic Con, I think March 30th through April 1st. So start doing the shows again. It's just like, oh man, it's con season again. It's like, wow. Are you guys going to be any of these shows, or are you guys mainly East Coast?
We're pretty much East Coast.
Yeah, the furthest that we've traveled inward was I managed to make it out to Philly for a PAX excuse me, for PAX Unplugged back in November.
Oh, nice! That's a great show.
It was a lot of fun. But really,
you get to play games. It's awesome.
Exactly. Yeah, we're lucky enough to live an hour and a half away from Boston, so every time PAX East every time PAX East comes to town, it's always a big deal for us, and also Boston Comic Con. Which do you know if you're going to be there this year, or is that still way too far out?
I talked to the Fan Expo guys. I think I'm good to go on that show. So hopefully I'll see you guys again, and maybe we can set up something where I can do a sketch cover for you guys you can pick up at the show. So
I like those things that you just said. Those are nice things.
Okay. Yeah, my pleasure. So,
I want to warn you, for WonderCon, if he hasn't gotten you yet, there's this guy named Tom who might get you to draw a giant evil robot.
I've drawn one.
Have you? No shit.
Yes, I've drawn two, because one for his book.
Oh, were you in
San Diego?
Yeah.
And then it got stolen.
Yeah.
And then he dropped it off at Boston again. He's like, dude, someone stole it. I'm like, what? He goes, look, can you draw another one in there? I'm like, yeah, dude, just run it by. I'll hook it up. No problem. I'm like, that's horrible. Who would steal a guy's sketchbook, man?
Especially like with the collection that, that just answers my own question.
Yeah,
he had
it's
some
still messed up.
incredible stuff.
Still super messed up.
Yeah, he's been on our.
Super messed up, man.
He's been on twice.
Way back in the day.
It's happened to him twice?
No, I mean he's been on our show.
Oh.
He's been a guest of ours.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
Yeah.
Like I felt really bad for him. Like, yeah, dude. Like, he goes, I'll pay for it. I'm like, nah, don't worry about it, man. That's like, I can imagine how much money he's already lost in just like, emotionally his collection, but then also, just it's horrible, man. It's like, oh. Man.
Well, he's up to like 4 books now.
Yeah. Jeez.
That's great. Don't lose him.
Unbelievable the amount of stuff he has. I don't.
Oh, I wanted to bring up
to him.
Another guest of ours that you've worked with. We've talked to Todd DeZago a while ago.
Oh yeah, Todd's great. Yeah.
And I saw.
How's he doing?
It was we talked to him right in the middle of when he was putting out the Telos books.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it was like
have
within.
Those come out yet? Or
yes, they have. Yep.
Okay, cool.
We got to him like I think 10 days before the purchase window closed.
Right.
And one was finished, and he was still waiting on some art to come back on the second one, on volume 2.
Wow, that was a huge undertaking. 2 omnibuses of like anthologies is like, holy smokes. Yeah, Todd's a good dude, man. I did a lot of Marvel Spider-Man stuff with him back in the day, man. It's just like, it's kind of a shame too. He's a really good writer. I wish he would get more mainstream stuff too. Yeah, man. What's he up to these days besides Telos? Is he?
He occasionally puts out some more Perhapanot stuff with Craig Rousseau.
That's right, Craig. That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. That's right. Man.
Yeah, they had the Kickstarter.
See, this is what happens when you work in comics and you're in your own little bubble. You're like, no, I got that book. Holy smokes! Like, there's a couple good shops out here. It's just I don't go as often as I would like, and sometimes when I go in, most shops only order they order their pull list, but then they order maybe only a couple of copies past their pull list, and then by the time I get in there, like I don't know what's available. So I'm like, oh. He said, "Oh, you should read that." I'm like, "You haven't?" Oh, we sold that. I'm like, oh, man.
Yeah, like, it's that dilemma of they need to order enough to fulfill, but they can't over order because I imagine their margins are already so thin, anyways. It's just.
Well, you want to get the collection? We only have 1, 3, and 7 right now. So.
Yeah, that's tough, right? And then you have to resort to like eBay and then those like atrocious shipping prices and all this stuff. You're like,
That happened to me literally last week because there's a book that Image puts out called Maestros.
Okay.
I think it's is it Dave Stewart? I can't remember.
No, that's I know who you're talking about. That is oh man.
I'm looking it up now. Yeah, I can't remember who. Steve Scrossi?
Yeah,
Scroce?
Scroach. Yeah, Steve Scroach.
Dave Stewart does the color and the art on it, and some of the art. But I bought issue 4 last week. It was new last week, and like the first page in, I'm like, what is this? When did this happen? And then I Google it. I missed issue 3. Oh, like, and I don't think the shop's gonna have it, so I got to go to eBay, and it's like, okay, so it's gonna be cover price plus double cover price for shipping, and it's like, come on,
I know on the Image stuff they have a warehouse that they overprint a couple of things, so you should just talk to your comic shop if they sell it. Say, hey, can you reorder a copy for me?
Then he's got to wait for it.
Yeah, and I'm also painfully shy, and I hate to inconvenience people, but then again, they're probably just all they care about is selling it. But
yeah, I'm the same way. I kind of want it now. You're like,
exactly. Now, we're coming up to a close on this. Are there any works that you're going to be, anything that you're going to be working on that you'd like to talk about? Plug it all, or where can people see your stuff? Et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, you can always go to my website, jonboymeyers.com. Facebook, you can just Facebook Jonboy Meyers. I have a art page and a regular page. Art page is always better. I think I'm maxed out on friends on my regular page. So, I just wrapped up my cover run. I did 13 covers for Superman, and I just wrapped up my last cover with issue 45. And I think that transitions to the new team. I think they just announced it. Man of Steel transitions to this book called Man of Steel. With Brian Bendis and a bunch of other people drawing.
Oh yep.
So I'm curious to see what Bendis is gonna cook up. I hope it's a little bit more original, not like rehash stuff. Yeah. But he's really good at taking classic stories and putting a really cool twist on it, like he did on Ultimate Spider-Man. Yeah. So, what else am I doing? I actually took a huge step back from a lot of projects. I think I got really burnt out on just the ups and downs of working for Marvel and DC and going through some of the headaches that I had to go through on it. Just how things are done, how contracts are structured, and I'm just like, you know what? I think I'm kind of done doing stuff for publishers at the moment. I've had a couple offers to do stuff, but I'm actually working on my own thing right now. So I'm not quite ready to announce it yet, but one thing I would have to say is man, writing is super easy. I don't know why more artists are not doing it, because I'm writing and drawing my own thing, and I wrote it. I'm like, man, this isn't so hard. What's the big deal? Yeah. So I say that now, and then when it comes out, people are like, this sucks. I'm like, oh. My feelings will get all hurt, but I'm writing and drawing it myself, and I don't know if I want to color it myself. That's just way too crazy, but I'm working on that, so I'm getting that pitch ready, and I don't know if I want to do a Kickstarter to launch it or just take it straight to a publisher. I haven't kind of figured that out yet, so it's already written. I'm just putting together my pitch and finishing up designs, and then putting a little promo together, and once it's done, I'll send you guys a copy, and just, let me know what you think. Say, hey, maybe fix this or maybe change that, or I don't know what this is. This writing's horrible. I don't know. It'd be nice to get feedback on it for people who are fans and have a really good taste in as far as comics and things like that.
You're assuming a lot over here.
Well,
you're assuming that we have the mental capacity to critique something.
No, honestly, I think feedback's a good thing, and I think if you throw something out to somebody, and they can say a million different things, but if you throw out to 100 different people, and out of those 100 different people, they all say the same one thing consistently, then that's probably the one thing you need to fix. You know what I mean? So it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe get rid of that character or restructure this, or hey, you know what? You thought you can write, but you can't. So, so I've been working on projects and just doing some video game stuff. I did some animation stuff. that's about it. I'm just kind of keeping a little low profile right now. And when I come back, I want to make sure, like, when I come back to comics, that things come out on a monthly again, because I love doing monthlies and I can do monthlies. I just, I think with the last two projects I had with Teen Titans and with Inhumans, it was just like the schedules are all jacked up, and it's just like, okay, you know what, like, start fresh.
Yeah, everyone deserves a chance to take it easy every now and then.
Yeah.
But I hope so. Yeah. I hope people like it, and my feelings will be really hurt if they hate it. But it'll be totally something different from my superhero stuff. So I'm not going to go full crazy. It'll be something a little bit different stylistically. Because I think there's things that you can do in comics that, again, it's very editorially driven. So they want a specific thing on it. Like, hey, that thing that you did on that book, this is what we want. They're like, well, what about this thing right here, like this, where it's a little more cartoony, a little bit more fun, and you're always constantly told to dial it back and stuff like that. And I'm like, dude, like, you got a million comics that look like this already, so like, let me do something different. Like, no, we want more of this. So you're like, okay. So.
Well, I am. I'm speaking for Alex as well. We're both anxious to see what you come out with next. It's going to be. That sounds super exciting. But as we wrap up, Jonboy, I gotta say thank you so much. This was a ton of fun. I gotta say you are easily one of the kindest and like most. I don't know the right adjective here, but it was a really good chat, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Hey, I had great guys to podcast with. I really appreciate you guys coming on the show. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys at Boston too. So if I'm there, please definitely stop by.
Sure. Yeah, I was just gonna say that. Hopefully, we'll be able to catch up. I mean, we haven't missed one in 8 years now, so I imagine we'll do our best to get there this year.
Right
hopefully they'll have a little more space.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yep.
I do have one more thing to add though.
Yeah.
Like
throw it in.
So anybody who listens to the podcast is a fan of comics, I always urge people, go out to your local comic shop, support your comic shops, buy titles that you like, even if you're going to buy a trade or whatever. The money that you spend in a comic shop goes a long way to supporting the direct market, which keeps comics going. I know a lot of people buy from Amazon and things like that, and those places are great. But if you can, like, making an effort to support your local comic shop is always appreciated, man. And it's the retailers that actually keep our industry going. So the more that we can do to support them, the more we'll have comics to enjoy here in the future. So that's it.
Respect. No, that's
fine.
That's vital.
You're not the first person to say support your local shop, and we always give like the respect nod, like, yeah, he's right.
You're damn right. Yeah. But
yes, for sure,
Jonboy, this was a ton of fun. Best of luck with all future endeavors. Whatever comes after your next work here. But I believe that's going to do it. I think we're pretty much good on time. This was a lot of fun. Until next week, I have been JR.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Jonboy Meyers.
And this has been episode 307 of Opinions May Vary.